Hi Ram, and welcome back to our history class. We will be continuing with our revision of the lesson Socialism in Europe and the Russian Revolution. So, we will talk about the Civil War. Now, in the countryside, in Russia, Bolsheviks ordered land redistribution. And because of this, the Russian army began to break up. As the soldiers, who were peasants, they wanted to go back home for the redistribution. Now, thus non-Bolsheviks, the socialists, liberals, and supporters of autocracy, they condemned, criticized the Bolshevik uprising. The leaders of the Bolsheviks, of the non-Bolsheviks, moved to South Russia. And there they organized troops to fight the Bolsheviks. Bolsheviks who were said to be the Reds. Bolsheviks were called the Reds. The Greens were Socialist Revolutionaries. And who were the Whites? Whites were the Pro-Tsarist. Now what happened was, during 1918 and 1919, these Greens and Whites controlled most of the Russian Empire. Thus, non-Bolsheviks were supported by French, American, British and Japanese troops. This force were worried now. They were worried about the growth of socialism in Russia. This fight between the Bolsheviks and these troops of French, American, British and Japan, as I told you now, is nothing but civil war. Looting, banditry and famine became common. So, hard steps were taken. By whom? By the supporters of private property amongst the Whites. And it was against whom? Against the peasants, because they were the ones who were taking away all the lands from the nobles. And these peasants who had taken away land and seized land, okay, this fight was against the peasants. Now, this was the reason for the loss of popularity or popular support for the non-Bolsheviks. Peasants started hating them, criticizing them. But what happened was, by January 1920, the Bolsheviks, they controlled most of the Russian Empire. Now I'm saying Russian Empire means the regions that was under the Russia. Okay? They were succeeded because of the support and cooperation with the non-Russian nationalists and Muslim jihadists. Now in Khiva, that is in Central Asia, Bolsheviks brutally killed, massacred local nationalists. Yes. In the name of, in the name of socialism, defending socialism, they killed people, they killed nationalists. And so, because of this action of the Bolsheviks, many were confused. Confused about what the Bolshevik government represented. Okay, now most of the non-Russian nationalities were given political autonomy in Soviet Union, USSR. USSR is the state the Bolsheviks created. From where? From the Russian Empire that was in December 1922. And what is autonomy? Autonomy is the right to govern themselves. Now, this was combined with unpopular policies like the harsh discouragement of nomadism. Now, again, what is nomadism? Lifestyle of those who did not live in one place but move from one area to another area to earn their living. So, the Bolshevik forced the local government to follow this unpopular policies. Unpopular policies means which was not liked by the people. But this attempt of the Bolsheviks to win different nationalists were only partly successful. Now let's begin with a new topic, that is making a socialist society. Okay, now here we are going to see the steps that were taken by the Bolsheviks to make Russia a socialist society. You may get question on this topic, so listen carefully. So the first step was this Bolsheviks. Okay, this Bolsheviks kept industries and also banks nationalized. They also permitted peasants. These peasants in the countrysides, they were permitted to cultivate the land that had been socialized. The Bolsheviks used confiscated land to demonstrate what collective work could be. The next step was a process was introduced. A process of centralized planning was introduced. Officials assessed how the economy could work and they set targets for 5 years period. On this basis, they made 5 years plan. What did the government do, you know, children? The government fixed prices, all prices, to promote industrial growth during the first two plans. That was, the first plan was from 1927 to 1932 and the second plan was from 1933 to 1938. Also, centralized planning led to economic growth. Industrial production increased. Okay, so this question will be asked as a one-line answer. 1 marks for 1 marks, one-line answer. Okay, so take care of the years and also what did the centralized planning led to. It led to economic growth, you can say. Also industrial production increase. And one more point you can add is new factory cities came into being. Yeah. Now, the third step taken by the Bolsheviks were an extended schooling system was developed, and also arrangements were made for factory workers and peasants to enter university, to get education in universities. Cheap public health care was provided. Model living quarters were set up for workers. So this all Bolsheviks do to make Russia a socialist society. You may get this question for 3 marks. Now, let's talk about Stalinism and collectivization. Now, did you see his Stalin? Huh? Now, let's move. What happened was, by 1927-28, the towns in Soviet Russia were facing acute problem of food grain supplies, shortage of food grains. Stalin, who became the head of the Bolshevik party after Lenin's death, introduced measures. He introduced firm emergency measures to curb this situation, to bring this situation under control. What was the situation? Shortage of supplies of food grain. Now, he believed that the rich peasants and also the traders in the countryside were holding stocks, and this they were doing in hope of higher prices, in hope of getting higher prices for the grains. The well-to-do farmers of Russia, they were called as Kulaks. Well-to-do means rich farmers who owned lands. They were called as Kulaks. Now these Kulaks were raided because he thought they are holding the stock. So they were raided. And their land was taken away from them. This land was taken away to establish state-controlled large farms. That is collectivization, collectively cultivating the land. These farms were called as Kolkhoz. The bulk of land and implements were transferred to the ownership of the collective farming. Peasants worked on the land, and the Kolkhoz profits on the land and the Kolkhoz, it was shared. This profit of the land, of the Kolkhoz was shared by all. Who worked on the land? It was the peasants. And they were also given the share of the profit. But peasants were not happy with the system. Though they got their shares, they were not happy with this system. Now, peasants were not happy with Stalin's collectivization program. This program enriched peasants. They were not ready to cultivate in a collective form. Hence, they resisted the authorities. And also, they destroyed livestock. Between 1929 and 1929 and 1931, the number of cattle fell by 1/3. As the peasants resisted collectivization, they also argued that they were not rich. They argued that peasants were not rich. And they were not against socialism. They were not rich, nor they were against socialism. They did not want to work in collective farm. That's it. Those who resisted collectivization were severely punished. Many were deported and exiled. Now let's move on to our last topic of this lesson, and that is the global influence of the Russian Revolution and the USSR. Let us see the global impact of Russian Revolution. Now, Russia became the first country to establish a communist state. Many, communist parties were formed in countries after it. The Bolsheviks, they encouraged the colonial people to follow their experiments. Many non-Russians from outside the USSR participated in the Conference of the Peoples of the East, and the Bolsheviks founded a Comintern, an international union of pro-Bolshevik socialist party. Some received education in the USSR's Communist University of the Workers of the East. Socialism became popular by the time of the outbreak of the Second World War. By the end of the 20th century, the international reputation of USSR as a socialist country had declined. It was declined. Okay, but the socialist ideas were still respected among the peoples. But in each country, the ideas of socialism were rethought in a number of ways. Children, we have done with this lesson. We have covered nearly all the points. Just keep in mind, if the question is for 3 marks, you are going to write 3 points, relevant points. If the question is asked for 5 marks, you have to write 5 points. And if it is for 1 marks, you are going to write 1 line answer, not 1 word. You are going to practice the map. Do see all the pictures given in the, in the test book. Everything in the test book is important. Read it. I'll stop over here. We will meet in the next class with our political science subject, and a new lesson for revision. Thank you. Take care. Bye.